we had today. It's always a pleasure, always a fun time for myself. I hope it's a fun time for everyone else that joins as well. Not just fun, but informative and educational. Not that I'm the end all be all of knowledge and information, but the whole thing is to ask questions. And when we have questions, we have discussion, and we get better and better answers. It's an iterative process. We're always growing, always learning something new. And as I always like to say, always got to listen to the smartest person in the room. And I have my list of people that I overwhelmingly listen to that make me appear not smart. And it's overwhelmingly the case that so many people are so smart. Imagine, I always like to think of like the true smart people, like a person that graduates from MIT with two PhDs and they never studied a day in their life. And those are really the true smart people, the people that have no restrictions and all the capabilities in the world. And those are really the people I would love to see in government at some point, wouldn't everybody? Could you imagine the geniuses, the people that have a capacity to wrap their head around society at large and these massive structures with so many moving components? Anyway, but we have to work with what we got. And we all have our daily routine, our daily lives, and we have to make the best decisions possible. And that's why I like to talk, and I like to listen, and I like to answer questions. Whoa, Gabriel's in the house. Long live and prosper. Dare I break it out? Yes, I did. Up on the screen, I got yesterday's poll about what people want to talk about, but let's hit up the chat. DigiByte or Just Nibble, Kyber or Ren. Ooh. All right, we could jump away real quick from yesterday's poll. Let's look at the Ren chart. I look at the long-term time frames. Clearly, short-term time frames have their respective meaning and usefulness, but the long-term time frames are really the trend. And they're so much more meaningful in the grand scheme of things. And they're much more meaningful to me because I'm more of a fundamentals kind of guy. I'm not clearly I look at the technicals. This is technical information on the screen. But when you look at the longer term time frames, it starts to blur the lines between technical information and fundamental information. Charts are psychology. Charts are momentum. Charts are getting into the heads of people that are actually purchasing and selling particular assets. And as you can see here, this chart clearly says, from a fundamental perspective, that this is a heck of a project. It's way past all-time high. It's in territory of a price discovery, which is an absolutely fascinating place to be. And REN is overwhelmingly a profound piece of technology that has capabilities far beyond merely a UTXO, decentralized UTXO private key management, as we've been talking about in some of the REN channels of late. Um, so that just highlights the sheer potential for the technology. Clearly, this use case, a use case that is being pursued as of now, which is decentralized UTXO private key management, is profound because it facilitates an interoperability between all projects, UTXO and smart contracts in the crypto space. And that allows for UTXO equity to be consumed in the DeFi system. Absolutely fascinating what REN is capable of. Not just its use case, its current use case, but its technological potential. It is a truly disruptive technology. Anyway, that was very long-winded about the question Kyber or Ren. So this is Ren. It is making moves. This clearly has a capacity to retrace. Briefly, if we look at the 4 hour, it clearly topped, and we have a lower high. So this gets into what does that mean? If there's a lower low, that's a bearish trend. We have to see how these candles play out, and this is what the shorter time frames um, start to introduce with regard to what we think about. Look at this. If you go shorter 1 hour, you got a lower high, Let's see when this 1 hour closes if it's lower than the most previous low, as you can see by my mouse cursor. If we end up with something like this, if it's a lower low, and that's heading in the direction of a bearish trend. I don't want to even go to the 30-minute. Um, I'll skip over Synthetix because we could talk about Kyber. Look at Kyber. Kyber hasn't moved. What a fascinating potential. I think Kyber actually is my play right now. I think Kyber is a governance token, a completely distributed governance token, meaning it's like Comp and Bow, but it's 100% distributed already. It's already in the space. It's already out there. Uh, there's nothing that's guaranteed, but from what we've seen with the craziness of Comp and Bow and how the prices have been driven through the roof, if you combine that with the fact that Kyber is a governance token, check, and the protocol upgrade is going to have massive deflationary pressures, check, check, that hits my fancy. Also, the fact that there's a recurring revenue component to the protocol upgrade, the notion of staking and getting a portion of transaction fees. That is everything to at least the structure of my portfolio, recurring revenue streams. Um, so obviously I have these three charts up, Ren, Synthetix, and Kyber. These are pretty much the heart of my Ethereum plays, aside from Ethereum, and I have a position in Loopring. Um, but these are the big positions, Ren, Synthetix, and Kyber. Ren has moved, and as you can see, Synthetix has moved. Synthetix is approaching it's getting to all-time high, but there's going to be resistance. There's always resistance at all-time high. Ren on the weekly clearly surpassed the crap out of all-time high, uncharted territory. But look at Kyber. Kyber hasn't hit it yet. But Kyber is a central component to DeFi. It's positioning itself as an entry point to acquire liquidity. And the partnership list on with Kyber may actually be a larger partnership list than Ren. Absolutely crazy. Checking the chat, Davor says, Noah, if you have any time, speak about Teller, please. Listen, Teller is cool. It's an oracle, and so is a band protocol. Um, we have to think about it from a fundamental perspective. Oracles are disruptive, one. Two, Chainlink has out of the gate momentum. It is a beast. It is getting integrated it's a fundamental component of a baseline protocol. It's just every Synthetix uses it. All any asset that wants Oracle data is already likely consuming Chainlink in some regards. And that's crazy. That means it has momentum. And momentum is almost everything. Look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin is what it is merely because of momentum. It was the first out of the gate. It was the first of its kind. There's clearly technologies that are far superior to Bitcoin, but nothing's going to disrupt Bitcoin because of its momentum. In that regard, I guess I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. I don't think it's going to get disrupted, but I think there's crazy potential in other lateral technology is stuff that's going on aside from Bitcoin. It's just crazy. It's mutually exclusive, but you're not going to disrupt the Bitcoin. So I think that's the case. Likely, the way I see it in my mind with regard to Teller and Band Protocol, I don't see Chainlink being disrupted. Disrupting Chainlink is like disrupting an ongoing disruption. I've said that phrase before. And that is highly unlikely to occur because it's an ongoing disruption. It's actually growing strength and momentum. How could he disrupt something that's actually growing in strength and momentum? But that does not diminish the potential for Teller and Band protocol. I think they're quite interesting. Myself, I don't get involved with Teller because I would want a recurring revenue stream, which would be a node, and a node requires a hefty collateral uh, as well as GPU mining hardware. So that's not something for me. This is a case of not owning something that I want to own because I cannot have a position that I want to have. Remind yourselves of that. And I remind myself every day because I don't own Chainlink, I don't own Unibright, um, and I want to, but I don't. I don't own Maker. I want to, but I don't because I cannot have the position I want to have. I would be spread too thin. Never go all in, never spread too thin. The rules of a balanced portfolio. More of an art than a science. I'm not here to shill Teller. Yeah, Teller's great. It's cool. You have to evaluate the fundamentals. So you're a fellow renter, Daver. Yeah, well, it's not about FOMO. There's these viral components like Rentard and Link Marines, but these are technologies, and I like to think of these as companies, but they're not companies in the sense that the company has a business and gets revenue, but I'm seeing them more as not just projects, but companies where they have a purpose, they have a function, a utility, and in that sense, they grow as a company. They gain adoption, and they have more users, which is like more sales. So it's very metaphorical in many regards to what's emerging in the crypto space to legacy business systems. Excuse me. John, what's up, my man? I can't. You got here. You're at work. Thank you for joining. The comp distribution speed adjustment to match Eth network block time that was voted and passed. What impact does this have? Um, Clearly, the initial distribution was messed up. It was all going to tether collateral providers. Oh, they needed to balance it. I'm quite interested to see what their adjustments achieve with regard to balance. I mean, the bottom line is it's inevitable for Compound and Aave to directly accept RenBTC as collateral. Just a matter of time. They already accept WBTC. There's no reason they won't accept RenBTC, and that's really where um, we'll see some serious movement. Um, that changes a lot. I mean, we've seen what happens when providing collateral is incentivized, and WPTC has a particular on-ramp. Yeah, and it's a very different on-ramp as compared to RenBTC, which is completely decentralized. It's literally a DApp, and you're able to convert Bitcoin to RenBTC. It's a very different process. It's a decentralized process compared to the centralized process of WBTC. That doesn't diminish the potential for WBTC, but I think the overwhelming consensus, at least in my mind, and no doubt in most, is that RemBTC will far outpace the volume and consumption that WBTC will have because you could literally integrate RenBTC into systems. It's just the JavaScript SDK that facilitates this functionality of converting Bitcoin to RemBTC. Absolutely fascinating. Devor, cheers for this, sir. It is my pleasure. I'm happy to talk about all these projects. In fact, folks have asked me to talk about Hex. I think we could talk about that in another video. But all right, fine. Generally speaking, projects need to have utility, function, and fit into the big picture. And they need to latch on to real world systems and have a target for disruption. If a project does not have a target for disruption, you're talking about it being valued based on pure speculation. And that is probably where I'd place such a project. I'd have to. There's other projects. I mean, historically, most Massimo projects find themselves in that position. They have no functional utility, and they produce emission, which is like many of the proof of stake projects over the years. So that's inflation. And inflation for what purpose? It's not like the inflation of Synthetix because the system is fundamentally poised to disrupt the entire legacy trading system. New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, I mean, Synthetix has derivatives, options. Uh, uh, um, you have inverse, which is a derivative, the inverse ETH, IF. And the potential for synthetic assets is enormous. You have S oil. So there's commodities on Synthetix, and with Chainlink, and that's where they get their pricing data. You could literally have equities on Synthetix. It's literally the components fulfilling the functionality of the New York Stock Exchange and global trading platforms. Absolutely fascinating. Noob question, Peter. Never a noob question. Always a good question. Is it possible to put BTC on DGB? Not the contrary. You cannot do it that way. You could put Bitcoin on Ethereum, you could put DigiByte on Ethereum, and that's because of a Turing complete smart contract, the power of it, and what has been built out in the DeFi space. DigiByte has assets, which is metadata associated with transactions. Which is quite different. DigiByte and its assets are well suited for tokenized representation of real world stuff, much like Ren does for its assets, where the value of the asset, the Digi asset, is equivalent to the value of the real world asset because there's a one-to-one proportionality. So there's no pricing data associated with the Ren BTC. There no, it doesn't need to be. Why? Because there's only one Ren BTC for a BTC. So it's inherently price equivalent. So that's the same thing with Digi assets and the potential for the platform. Uh, Hi, Noah. First time I've caught you live. Welcome, always a pleasure. Love the content and your foresight. What do you think will happen to the market tomorrow with all the BTC derivatives closing? You're talking from a short-term trading perspective. Obviously, my mind thinks more fundamental and very long-term. Obviously, I think there's great volatility in the crypto space as a whole, and Bitcoin, in most regards, drives the entire market. We are very susceptible to pullbacks. The long-term trend is overwhelmingly bullish, and even if we do you could do from a technical analysis perspective, you look at going to 6,000 and you're still in a bullish uptrend. I could get specific. I'm not too interested in it though. But the point is, we know conceptually where things are heading. We know deductively where we are as an economy, our monetary policy, fiat, what they're doing with it. And that's what I like to think about. And this allows me to formulate, observe, and produce uh, inevitabilities that I see. Um, Inevitabilities, that's a good word. And I talked about it in a Twitter post a little earlier. I mean, there's two fundamental things that are required to assess if something is inevitable, especially with regard to technology. One, it needs to work. Two, it needs to make money. If it makes money and it works, it's inevitable. How about that? Uh, my man James in the house. Yeah. Yes, everyone, a bit late. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Friends, like real estate? Um, in what regard? In what regard? Real estate is a wonderful way to diversify um, because it's not equities, it's not commodities, and not precious metals, it's not crypto. It's another asset class. And it's very important to spread gains across all the asset classes, such that if there's volatility in a particular asset class, you see where I'm going? You're able to weather individual asset class volatility because you're diversified. Never spread too thin, but never go all in. Don't be in just crypto. You need to have some gold. Don't be in just gold. There's some equities. You need some equities, but that's an entirely other topic that kind of makes me regurgitate a little bit just thinking about it. I don't trust equities and their valuations at all. One bit, not one bit. That is that. Listen, if you look at the charts for the big indexes, it's a giant. It is the most massive rising wedge I've ever seen. I think this thing's going to break down so hard, and it's just so sad for all those Hertz investors. Jesus Christ! Well, literally, it's a tragedy. It's 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 bad. It's really bad, and there's going to be a lot of pain and a lot of anger, and we see that what's going on, especially on the mainstream news media. There's a lot of pain and anger, and it's because of disparity. Believe this is what I say to my wife constantly. Believe me, people aren't rioting that are that have to wake up tomorrow morning to get $100 an hour at their well-paying job. So fundamentally, the riots are predominantly disparity. Clearly, the race inequality is absolutely disturbing, and a history is tragic and embarrassing. But if you have to wake up tomorrow morning for your $100 an hour job, you're not rioting the night before. So it's predominantly, in so many regards, I think about disparity. Um, DGB, tokenize. James in the house. Tokenize, tokenization, representation, equivalence, one-to-one equivalence, inherent pricing, absolutely fascinating. RenVM, James says RenVM to change the Bitcoin mining strategy and reduce sell pressure. So that was the biggest thing that got me into Ren when I first thought about that, because I think in terms of recurring revenue streams. Um, why the hell would they sell their Bitcoin? It's gone. Once you sell something, it's gone. And this is really where the United States used to be when you had actual non-pathetic interest rates by banks. Um, you save your money and you earn by saving your money. You grow your wealth. So why would you sell Bitcoin when you could get 2 to 8%? You take a little bit more risk, you throw it into a liquidity pool, you convert it to some other assets, and you generate yield 20, 30, 40, 50%. Who knows the DeFi games you could play? It's the same thing as what exists in the legacy financial system. Carry trades, search for yield. The search for yield is dead in the legacy system entirely, and it is literally exploding out of the gate in the DeFi space. It is not just alive and well. This thing is poised to disrupt the legacy financial systems profoundly. Profoundly. Absolutely crazy. Tokenized real estate with DGB. Yeah. Yeah. Tokenized real estate, tokenized contracts, tokenize. And that's the whole point. And so I think DigiByte is the premier network to do it on, particularly because of the speed. As I say all the time, what's going to play out with the UTXO chains, most of them without uh, side components like Syscoin and interoperability and BlockNet is just crazy what they're doing. But fundamental UTXO chains have protocol properties. They have consensus mechanisms. They have the algorithms, and that's a property. And then they have nodes and node distribution, geographical node distribution. So I think the UTXO chains will find themselves in a basket, and eventually we'll have like a consolidated SDK, which I think Rosetta might be something like that. Consolidated SDK that interacts with this basket of currencies, offering developers a way to choose whatever chain they want, depending on the protocol properties, what best suits the business need. And clearly, DigiByte stands out front with its speed, potential, its overwhelming distribution, decentralization, and geographical node distribution. Those are the meaningful properties that a business has to consider. Because believe me, before a business considers using a UTXO chain for record storage and asset management, they have to think about their own necessity to contribute to the security of the platform. So they're going to have to be miners, or maybe if they choose a proof of stake coin, which entails they have to assess, accumulate, such that they're contributing to the security of the platform. And the miners are going to have to get hardware. What kind of hardware? What kind of algorithm are they going to be mining? So these are all considerations that are going to have to be made when choosing to use one particular UTXO or another. And DigiByte stands out. It has 5 algorithms, which means the company has much more choice. Absolutely fascinating, the potential of what's to come. Igor, my man. Hello, everyone. Noah, can you please break down XRP? XRP is a profound payments technology, and I think it's poised. Its intent is to disrupt the payment system. Um, and they have done work with Swift, and it has a huge amount of potential. What are they trying to disrupt? They're trying to disrupt payments, and who has a monopoly on payments? The governments and fiat. So they're trying to disrupt basically the government monopoly. So when we're trying to understand the potential of a technology from a fundamental perspective, one, does the technology work? Sure. XRP is profound. It works. Two, does it make money? Sure. It saves a fortune in transaction fees because there's basically no transaction fees with XRP. Three, and this is the third component. How susceptible is the target market for disruption? I don't think it's susceptible at all. I think the governments are going to push for CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. They want to retain their monopoly and retain full control. And frankly, they had got to head down the road of MMT really quick. And I think it's going to happen sooner than later. But obviously, in government talk, sooner than later is days and weeks, months. But they're going to have to do straight up MMT, which means they need full control, a full capacity to distribute money as fast as possible to where they need to place liquidity to maintain an actual functional economy, because it looks like it's falling apart at the seams. XRP is technically deflationary currency. It deflationary protocol currency. Maybe it's a currency. I don't know. Whatever. Besides the point, it's trivially deflationary. The burn rate per transaction, because the transaction fees are basically zero, is basically zero. And when I invest in or save, accumulate assets, I'm looking for deflationary protocols and recurring revenue streams. Those are the big ones. Synthetix is another story. It has an inflationary component, but the other aspects of the project overwhelmingly compensate. So this is really why a robust fundamental analysis is required in order to assess what your positions are. OJJ, watch Alexander's interview with Kane from Synthetix. He describes why the value prop for XRV is dead now. Listen, the price of XRP is driven entirely by speculation. That's it. There's no deflationary component. There's no recurring revenue stream. It's it's like there's no staking, which reduces supply. The big reason Kyber's crazy is and uh, that's why these liquidity protocols, Uncurve, Balancer, Uniswap, are so crazy because they're locking up supply, um, and that has a massive impact on supply and demand balance. It's deflationary pressure. Absolutely crazy. Um, what do you think about David Schwartz and his patent? I don't know the patent off the top of my head, my man. I'm interested though. John says, is there a way to create support DeFi yield farming on DigiByte, taking advantage of DigiByte's strengths? I doubt it. I don't think so. Technologically, I don't think it's something that's possible. You need logic, you need computing power, you need a Turing complete. DigiByte is a UTXO chain, and fundamentally, as compared to Bitcoin, it has scripting. So there's um, software that could be built for DigiByte, but it's scripting. It's just more rigid. It doesn't have data storage. It's not Turing complete. Um, and that's just it. This does not diminish in any regard the potential for DigiByte. It's just different. It will find its place. It is decentralized. Critical mass decentralization. It will exist in perpetuity. It will be consumed. DigiByte's consumption is an inevitability. Rocco Reed, do you know of an awesome resource for how to build mining rigs for different coins? Okay, so before you start thinking about mining, I mine myself at points in time. You got to go to whattomine.com and you got to assess if it's even profitable to mine. Mining nowadays overwhelmingly is a matter of scale. You need to scale the crap out of the mining rig deployment to produce profit, and you got to write a business model because you got to assess profit, the maintenance requirements, and you really got to crunch the numbers. Uh, it's a business. Mining is a business, a very lucrative and intensive business, and the hash rates, and when to take miners offline, and when to spin up new miners, and when to get loans to expand, and it's a business. It's not really a hobby anymore. Um, it's just not. At least that's what I see. Uh, that happens instantly, free, and with deep liquidity on ETH provided by ever-growing pools with no slippage. Well, no, slippage is when there's deep liquidity. Um, there's no slippage when there's deep liquidity. And look, we're heading down the road of very fluid liquidity, interoperability between protocols, and this is just going to play so much into the DeFi space. And once and as all this liquidity and this fluidity in the markets start to really gain momentum, um, the search for yield is just going to be so intoxicating, and it's so going to carry over to the legacy systems and be like, I want to throw $10 million into Uniswap and then just get the trading fees because people are seriously trading. They're going back and forth. If you look at the numbers of people participating in 1 inch Uniswap Kyber balancer, and it's small. It's not millions of people. It's not. So that just shows you where we are in the spectrum of adoption. We're barely starting off. And it's even in these early stages, it's just exciting and crazy because we're able to see what the potential is. The potential is to fundamentally disrupt legacy financial systems. The search for yield is dead in the legacy systems. The search for yield is not just alive and well, it is exploding with excitement in the crypto space. Absolutely crazy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, 12:30. I think it's time to conclude another episode of Noah Talks. I'm going to be on Twitter. I'm going to get some questions out there, throw up my polls as I like to. Hit me up with your questions, and as always, it's a Q&A. That's what we do. Thank you everyone for joining. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.